I like what you say about all the deep connections that we have, and when we practice together, we notice these more and more. Um, First, simply through the teaching that all beings are interrelated, but much more personally than that. And so there are several of you on the screen right now, at least three that I've never actually met in person, but I feel deeply connected to you nonetheless. Uh, and it's through our mutual practice and to a certain extent, well, just the kind of socializing we do after practice sometimes, which is kind of like the tail end of practice, you might say. You know, it's still practice, but I think it's that the connection is felt more deeply than you would get from the connection you would feel from simply socializing. Um, there's something about socializing uh, right after, you've been meditating together. So it's sort of like deep and again deep, you know, the, that old saying. Um, and I really felt that when you were talking, Jennifer. How long have we known each other?
Has it been about 13 or 14 years, I think?
Yeah, so we ought to know each other fairly well by now, I guess, anyway. And, it's such a privilege being a teacher because, through interviews, we really get to know each other. Um, I don't know. Maybe we should have students interview each other. That way, I don't know how that would work. But anyway, I feel deeply about what you're talking about. I feel that it's true. It's as true can be. So thank you. So does anyone have a question, an insight, a remark, a perplexity? Max.
Jennifer, thank you. I think that talk was really nice, and I was just thinking to reflect upon what you were saying, the connections among family. My daughter just turned 22 on March 4th, so she's a grown woman now. And my mother passed away December 3rd. And my daughter and I had a very rough relationship because, she was coming to age and she had her personality. And I was her father and trying to you got to do this and that. And when my mother died, since she was so close to my daughter, it sort of changed the whole scenario because my daughter realized that I won't be around all her life. And I realized that she's an adult. So it's interesting that you can't really, well, you can, but our practice helps us to have these insights in the relationships we have and to take advantage of what we always say, good situation, bad situation. The passing of my mother as an event that brought us together. And it's been 3 or 4 months with my daughter that we've had such a close relationship. She's given me websites and, look at this podcast. And we've got something together. So I think it's very interesting what you said, about how you build these relationships with people. And I think our practice gives us a lot of strength or a lot of patience and a lot of clear mind to go into the relationship, especially with father and daughter, without, this idea father has to tell daughter what to do, but just being able to see her as an adult. So I appreciate your talk, and I can really relate to what you were saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Does anyone else have anything to say or ask?
So this is unrelated to anything about the talk, but this morning you quoted from Chanul, and Can you talk a little bit more about what that was you were reading of Chanul's? Because
Uh,
that really hit me.
um, it's a document you can actually find. How can you find this document? Oh, if you simply go to Quantum School of Zen Temple Rules. So on the Quantum School of Zen website, or you'll find the temple rules. And it's our temple rules with some supplementary material. I think that's where I found it. um, I don't know where else it really would have been. Uh, I mean, you could try Googling Chanul, I suppose, but I doubt that that would show up, that particular document. So what I was reading, and I don't know how I found it or why, to tell you the truth. You know how things go. How one thing leads to another when you're, you know, on your computer. Um, uh, so he's about the year 1200. And Pai Chang is in the 800s, and he is supposed to be the first one, as I said this morning, who formulated temple rules. And then there were many, many different versions of temple rules through, the centuries. And I'm not sure exactly where our temple rules came from. The feeling that I have, a vague memory, is that Zen Master Sung San compiled them from other versions. It certainly reads that way. Uh, so, Chanul was a truly great teacher. You have to say that he certainly founded the Chogye school of Korean Zen, and you might say that he founded Korean Zen. He did have a great predecessor named Won Hyo, who's much earlier, about 4 centuries earlier, and was a real character and a tremendous scholar. And his works are just now being edited for the first time. I think the University of Hawaii is putting together some massive compilation of Won Hyo's teaching. Anyway, he also had some temple rules, and as I said, I don't know what the latest version might be, but it struck me that a wonderful exercise would be to draw up your own temple rules. So temple, implies a sangha, and so it's just what you were talking about, Jennifer. You might call it Sangha rules. Well, that would be a good cheer. Sangha rules, but rules in the other sense, So to try to actually formulate, well, how do we get along best? How can we really be good to each other? How can we really help each other? And yeah, just follow your heart, your natural human instincts. Well, sorry, I'm told I have to wear these or I won't be heard, but sometimes they fall out. So you follow your heart, and you will be good to people, you might say. But we're human beings. We don't always, follow our best impulses. We don't always pay attention to our better nature. So we write out things like, the temple rules. Now you can see that in the early monastic practices in China. Most of the students were very young. It was sort of like boarding school, and then you grow up there and maybe you finally learn how to behave. I don't know if your school, Jennifer, has any temple rules. Do you have a code of conduct?
Probably use one. Use some temple rules.
I think codes of conduct are found in some schools anyway. But to formulate how you should be to another person, and not in some vague way, oh, we should always be nice, think about the other person. But go through a typical day in your life or a typical week with all of the people you might come into contact with. And how do you behave? How are you to them? How do you help them moment to moment? And if it's a family, then how can we have a harmonious family if you're in a family situation, especially with maybe younger members of the family. And I don't think we have much of that in our culture. I don't remember any of the schools that I went to. They were all Catholic schools up through university, having anything but the Ten Commandments. Okay, well, that's good. That's not a bad code of conduct and of personal behavior. But the temple rules don't contain overtly moral teachings. They're all just very, very practical, but they're also exhortations in the temple rules, exhortations to practice hard, to stay true to your vows. And we all need these reminders. So the point is to think about your life in very specific ways, instead of simply having these broad, noble intentions. But all of the small things that we're engaged in, both by ourselves and with each other. So we always have the question: how can I help? How can I help? And sometimes it's hard to think of a single thing. So, but we have to be specific. When we help someone, it's always in a specific way, although I suppose it could be sheer sympathy. You can simply project an attitude of sympathy, but then again, that is something particular. But just saying there, that doesn't help all that much. So it's things that we do and things that we say. And then maybe we can, do a better job of fulfilling our vow. The first great vow. Sentient beings are numberless. We vow to, and this is the word that Chinul uses, at least translate. We vow to ferry them across. So our first great vow in English is, sentient beings are numberless. We vow to save them all. Somebody once asked, save them for what? And the response was, well, save them for later. But, that's just making it into a joke. So the Chinese uses the word do, which means to carry across. So carry across, say, a flooded river or something like that. And maybe specifically it means to ferry across, to carry across in a boat. So, that's the original image. And, it's very practical. You come to a river, you got to get to the other side. You have a problem. You help the person to get to the other side. So to ferry across, all beings. I'm pretty sure that's how, I've got it right here, Chanul. He ends, you will use compassion and wisdom like sorcery. What do you make of that? You'll use compassion and wisdom, mind and heart, compassion and wisdom as sorcery, which is almost like magic. So if your vow really is to ferry across all sentient beings, well, that is magic. And where are you going to find the boat that's going to do that? It has to be a magical form of transportation. So sorcery. With compassion, you will use compassion and wisdom like sorcery. And ferry across sentient beings. You will become a great field of merit for humans and gods. We forget about saving the gods, kind of thing. So, I mean, if you had Greek mythology in your bones as deeply as I do, because, it was my profession, then you kind of understand, yeah, gods are all over the place. And we've completely lost gods in our culture. Maybe we have one god. The odd pagan among us may have, a few more gods. I don't know. But it's humans and gods. So this universe is vast and wide beyond our comprehension, and there are many, many beings in it. When we say sentient beings are numberless, we mean it. That are truly uncountable, infinite, all sorts of beings in this universe. And somehow all of them are in some kind of need, and we're vowing to help them all. It really is a universal vow. Yes, Tom?
Zen Master Hae Kwang, can you give us an example of a god making a big mistake?
A
Good
God,
example.
yeah, a God making a big mistake. I don't think there's
Yes.
a God in Greek mythology who doesn't make a big mistake. I mean, that's sort of the content um, of, mythology. So, for instance, Zeus sleeping with all of the females, human and divine, that he comes across. Um, Most of those relationships turn out to be absolutely disastrous. Um, I won't go into any details, but you can imagine, what I'm talking about. Um, they're disastrous in and of themselves. None of them ever come to any good. And then you have his wife Hera, who's keeping tabs on all of this. So there's more suffering there. So we do things that hurt other beings directly, and that hurt other beings indirectly. So you might say Zeus isn't directly um, hurting Hera, when he sleeps with Leda in the form of a swan, you know. But yeah, he is. And in fact, in some sense, and there's not much sense of this in Greek mythology, but he's corrupting the whole universe when he does what he does. And so when there's nothing in that I'm aware of in Greek moral philosophy about saving, the whole universe. They never got that far. The Greeks and the Romans never got that far at all. So I think we're very fortunate to be in a Buddhist practice rather than, say, even practicing Stoicism. So Stoicism is an ancient Greek practical moral philosophy that's getting a lot of attention today. There are all of these Stoic societies. Stoicism doesn't, the main virtue isn't what we call Stoic, which means just enduring everything with a stiff upper lip. That's simply the name for it's because it was originally taught on a porch, this wonderful painted porch called the Stoa Poikile, the painted porch, and that's where Epicurus taught. But I'm not saying there's no other religion, and I am calling Buddhism a religion. I think that's what it is. Even if there's no God, it's a spiritual practice. I think we're all very fortunate to have landed in this spiritual practice. I really do. I don't think there's much like it elsewhere in the world. Of course, I'm prejudiced, but you think about it. where else, in what other social organization are you going to say sentient beings are numberless? We vow to save them all. I can't think of any. So, are there any other questions? We can get back to practice and interviews soon. Did I conclude on too stern a note? I don't know. We'll see. Okay.
Stan,
Yes?
I was just thinking about what you said about Zeus and how his actions corrupted the whole universe.
Yeah.
And I liked the way you said that. And were his actions worse than our bad actions and bad words? Do we corrupt the whole universe when we say or do bad things?
Yes. Of course, I had in mind he corrupts the whole universe because he rules the whole universe. But I think what you say has a lot of validity. That our actions have repercussions that just go on and on,
Because if
on and on in time, and on and on. And there's a ripple effect because we're so connected. And so we're all so interconnected. Someone asked a question this morning about karma. Can karma be collective, or is it simply individual? So karma, the word karma just means action and result of action. As Zen Master Sung-san put it, you make, you get. You know, so we think of karma as being individual. Your karma, this person's karma. So this person did this, and this, and so this is the karmic result, the natural cause and effect sort of result. But because we are also interconnected, all of our karma is shared with, you could say ultimately, with all other beings. Certainly, you can see it in your lives that it's shared with beings that you're in close contact with. You know, what you do affects directly other people. And not only in an immediate way, but it kind of rearranges their internal psychology. That's kind of what karma is, and or contributes to that in a way that is often not beneficial, you know, to anyone. So that's another aspect of sangha, and you could think of sangha as a good karma making organization. I think I'll think of it that way. It's a nice way to think of each other. So thank you all very much, and we'll have some interviews, and before you know it, we'll be giving a circle talk as a sangha. Thank you.